Beneath the golden mist of the veil, ancient petals drift like memories on the breeze. Long before mortal banners were unfurled, 4 spirits burst forth from Freya's verdant sanctuaries. Chi-Ji the red crane, Niazao the black ox, Zhuan the white tiger, and Yulon the jade serpent. Drawn by the quiet heartbeat of life itself, they converged on the valley and breathed wisdom into its streams, grace into its forests, and calm into the souls who would one day call Pandaria home. For their boundless compassion, the people revered them as the august celestials. Thunder split the jade heavens the day Lei Shen, the Thunder King, marched at the head of his Mogu legions. With storm-forged brutality, the conqueror overpowered each celestial sanctuary, in turn silencing their shrines and binding their guardians. Chi-Ji, the living promise of hope, was shackled in searing runic chains and paraded above the sea of cowering Pandaran slaves. His crimson wings drooped. His song of courage was smothered by the roar of tyrants. In that moment, Lei Shen proclaimed that even heaven would bow before him. But tyranny could not chain the wind forever. When the Pandaren rose in revolution, Chi-Ji's restraints shattered alongside theirs. After the final stone idol of the Thunder King cracked, the red crane swept across the rain-washed sky, painting an arc of color above the land, so the Pandaren knew they need not fear the storms any longer. Ages later, Emperor Xiaohao strayed into the whispering marshes at the heart of his journey. Fog coiled like doubt around his ankles. Marsh water clutched at his stride. The weight of an unspoken future pressed him low, and his will faltered. High above, Chi-Ji traced wide circles against the bruised sky. His scarlet feathers alone spark in the gloom. He felt the Emperor's despair as surely as a storm feels thunder. With a sweeping dive, he broke the clouds, his wings scattering pearls of mist that shimmered like dawn. A hush fell. In that mirror-still silence, Xiaohao lifted his gaze. The crane's reflection rippled across the water, and in that trembling image he saw not a fallen sovereign, but a man who could rise. Chi-Ji's silent message unfurled like a banner. Hope is not given, it is chosen. The Emperor gathered himself and stepped forward, each stride lighter than the last. Above him soared the red crane, a living compass of possibility, guiding his path out of the marsh and into legend. A quiet reverence filled the temple of the red crane when Prince Anduin Rin arrived in search of guidance rather than glory. Under jade overhangs, Chi-Ji bestowed upon the young prince his knowledge, impressing upon him that hope is the sun behind a storm-tossed sky, ever in the heart but veiled to the eye. Yet war soon spilled into sacred halls. Battle shocks splintered the seals caging the Shaw of Despair, and shadow coiled around the red crane, chaining his wings in midnight iron. Remembering his lessons, Anduin returned with champions from every nation. Together they shattered Despair's carapace and lifted Chi-Ji into starlight once more. In gratitude, the Celestial dispatched pilgrims throughout Krasarang wilds, their crimson banners promising that even ravaged villages could bloom again. Not long after, those same heroes answered a summons to the cradle of Chi-Ji. Atop the pedestal of hope, they found Elia Ravenmane, her faith corroded by a ravenous Shaw. Chi-Ji joined the fray, sunlight shedding from his wings until Elia's fury broke like black glass. Bowing to his defenders, he stated, "The way of the crane is not to crush, but to lift." Later that day, all 4 Celestials met to open the gate, separating the Veil from the rest of Pandaria. Zhuan voiced the truth none could ignore. The Shaw could not be locked away again, they must be faced. With a single accord, the August Guardians pressed their sigils to the ancient gates. Golden doors groaned open and torrents of blessing rolled outward, fortifying the Golden Lotus in every hero who rose to their call. Surge after surge of celestial light swept the Guardians clear of Xiaotian Mogu. And at the shattered staircase of Giao Lai, the blood-mad warlord Zhao Jin fell beneath a dawn that tasted of plum blossoms and new beginnings. Sunwalker Desco arrived in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms with 2 sons, Cloudhoof and Redhorn. Their mother Lisa had long battled a wasting illness, and weakened beyond her limits, gave her last breath bringing the boys into the world. Carrying both the infants and her memory, Desco entrusted them to their mother's cousin Nala at the Shrine of 2 Moons. Meanwhile, the Golden Lotus scoured every village for a foretold child destined to join their ranks. Yet no spark answered their tests, until a vermilion comet swept through the pillared walkways, Chi-Ji himself. Chi-Ji sensed somewhere within the shrine that a destined child was here. Making his way through the shrine, he ended up in the room where Cloudhoof and Redhorn were in, with Nala protecting the young boys. Desco followed shortly afterward, making his way through the crowd that followed the Great Red Crane and told Nala to stand down. Chi-Ji cocked his head. You call them Cloudhoof and Redhorn, but those are not their real names. Not their real names? Mokimo squeezed through the refugees, Lotus, and Horde who were crowding around the partition, eager to watch. No. Desco looked at the Red Crane in astonishment. Redhorn and Cloudhoof were the children's weaning names, a rare tradition his tribe carried. In time, they would take on their true names, one for an old and dear friend who had died in Pandaria's coastal jungle, and the other for a new friend who had helped his tribe. I did not foresee twins. Chi-Ji's avatar turned to Ji. Only one need serve the veil. I understand, Ji nodded. The elder's calm facade had crumbled. There was genuine shock on his face. His eyes met Desco's. Children from afar. I never expected this, my friend, the Lotus leader said. It had crossed my mind, of course, but I never thought it was a real possibility. They are my sons. Desco struggled to make sense of what was happening. The whole series of events had unfolded so quickly. What you're asking me is to protect that which you have traveled so far to protect, the Red Crane replied. To honor your wife's dream, to sacrifice for the veil as she did. It is good you have two. One will help the veil, one will stay with you. The only thing left to do is choose. Chi-Ji's avatar began to fade into the air like smoke. Wait, Desco shouted. But there was no reply. The Red Crane disappeared. The Lotus members clapped in celebration. Behind them, refugees worked their way toward the children. The faces blurred together. Nala shoved a Pandaren who was reaching out for Redhorn, sending him crashing into the partition. Ji the Harmonious stammered, but Chi-Ji's decree was law. Yet Desco's heart clenched at the thought of a child raised far from Tauren Meadows and the songs of Thunderbluff. That night he set his path westward, vowing to honor his late wife's wish that he protect their young. Fate barred the gate. Shao-Ti and Mogu rallied at the gate of the August Celestials, forcing Desco to join a refugee band seeking passage through Mistfall Village. Evening shadows lengthened when Mokimo the Strong, Wang the Merciful, and Rook Stonetoe intercepted the caravan. Not to coerce, Mokimo promised, but to shield father and sons. Suspicion lingered in Desco's chest like an unhealed bruise. He refused to return. Midnight brought screams. Quillen burst from the undergrowth, fangs bright in moonlight. Redhorn was wrenched from Desco's grasp and carried into the dark. Hammer raised, he gave chase. Clutching Cloudhoof's basket to his chest, shielding the tiny calf within its woven cradle while his other arm swung the hammer toward the darkness. The pursuit ended in a ring of Mogu's spears. As steel flashed, Mokimo hurled himself between Redhorn and a poisoned blade, taking the wound meant for the calf. But Redhorn would still be poisoned due to a blade finding him. When the dust settled, Desco looked down at the wicker cradle still held in his arm against his body. Its frame shattered, and found Cloudhoof draped across his forearm, tiny body broken, and spirit already flown. Panic and grief tangled in a single ragged breath. Desco was unable to heal his son or Mokimo, and together they staggered to the Pool of Hope. There, water stilled to mirrored glass, as Chi-Ji appeared in a shimmer of dawnlight. The Celestial drew the venom from Redhorn and stitched Mokimo's torn flesh with vermilion glow, then vanished before Desco could beg for Cloudhoof. One child lay beyond reach, offered back to the stars. At dawn, Desco still knelt beside the pool, guilt anchoring every heartbeat. Mokimo pressed a steady hand to his shoulder and vowed to find passage home, but Desco's gaze lingered on the monk's quiet devotion and the memory of Chi-Ji's promise. Understanding blossomed at last. This journey, this sacrifice, was the echo of his wife's vision. With tears and a prayer, he placed Redhorn in Mokimo's arms, entrusting the boy to the Golden Lotus and to the Veil's radiant future. Turning north toward Mulgore, Desco carried only memories and the certainty that hope often asks the hardest farewell. War found the Temple of the Red Crane once more when Commander Skargash and his Horde troops raised barricades beneath its soaring arches. From a distance, Chi-Ji observed the encroaching banners of King Varian Wrynn. The Red Crane weighed the moment in a single thought. Would the wolf strike like a brute, or lead like a king? Varian answered in measured silence. He held back his blades, letting time grow and doubt gnaw at the defenders. When impatience finally drew Skargash's warriors beyond the sanctum walls, the king's trap snapped shut. Alliance bowstrings sang, shields locked into a gleaming phalanx. In a clash swift as lightning, the Horde ranks broke, scattering across flagstones still warm from sunrise. Few Alliance lives were spent that day, and the temple's pillared halls stood unscarred. Chi landed upon the temple steps and folded crimson wings. Satisfaction glimmered in his onyx eyes, yet he spoke of roads yet traveled. More trials, he hinted, awaited the wolf who would be High King. Not long after, the Black Dragon Rathian turned his gaze upon mortal champions who had tasted too much power without mastering its weight. Determined to temper hubris into honor, he envisioned a cloak of virtue, a relic woven from august blessings. Such grace, however, could be granted only to those who proved themselves within each celestial's domain. Thus began a pilgrimage. At the Temple of the Red Crane, Rathian's chosen hero knelt before Chi-Chi's still pool, its surface reflecting storms past and futures unseen. The Red Crane talks with Rathian of hope, and what Rathian thinks it means, while Rathian says, "Hope is a belief of a better tomorrow." Chi-Chi senses that he doubts his own words, so Chi-Chi gives him a challenge. "I challenge you to not think of hope as a vague and unimaginable future. Live every day with hope in your heart. In doing so, you create the future you dream of." Chi-Chi's challenge consisted of healing the most grievous of wounds, and Rathian and the adventurer go on to finish the challenge set forth by the Great Crane. Satisfied, Chi-Chi brushed a primary feather across the cloak's nascent weave. Hope flared within the fabric, a living ember bound for greater deeds. With his blessing gained, Rathian's champion turned toward the remaining temples, the mantle's edge whispering like wings ready to ascend. In the grim hush following the siege of Orgrimmar, the August Celestials assembled beside Lorewalker Cho and the champions of both Horde and Alliance within the Veil of Eternal Blossoms. Ash still clung to fallen terraces, yet amidst the ruin, the spirit of Emperor Xiaohao knelt and pressed a single luminous seed into the scarred earth. Chi-Chi watched his silver roots spiraled outward, birthing a sapling whose leaves shimmered like dawn after rain. Turning to the gathered heroes, the Red Crane declared that this tree would stand as a living sigil of hope, that the veil, though wounded, would one day bloom brighter for having endured. He charged them to nurture that promise in deed and in heart, so the land and its people might rise stronger than before. In the uneasy hush that followed the Fourth War, a deeper shadow slithered into the veil. Void tears were unleashed above the summer fields, linking Azeroth to the abyssal city of Nyalotha. From those holes in reality drifted the eyes of the Empire, lidless sentries whose gaze could unweave sanity. The 4 August Celestials met the incursion as one, their auras bright enough to stain the dark purple sky with gold. Chi-Chi wheeled over the terraces like a living comet, crimson wings scattered embers of dawn. His voice carried on every gust, a summons to champions of both Horde and Alliance. Together they plunged through garden paths turned battlefield, suturing each wound in the heavens and shattering the floating eyes before their whispering could take root. By night's close, the terrace had closed, the eyes lay in quiet shards, and the veil breathed freely again. Hope did not merely survive, it soared, feathered and fearless, above the summer fields. Now there was a section I took out which was just simply him in the book War Crimes, which goes over what happens to Garrosh after the Siege of Orgrimmar and they have a trial. The wiki really didn't have anything on it, but I do want to do a deep dive into that book. I have talked about Garrosh before, so I cover it more there, but it's a pretty interesting book, so in the future I'll probably look into doing more of that book. But with all that said and done, hopefully you did enjoy. Do take care of yourself. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.